Good morning, everybody. Just logging on. I just got myself in such a bad mood. Let me come back and come to you, and I know you're going to make things better right now. Super frustrating morning, right to the edge of insanity here. Good morning, Joelle and Penny. Got my wrong glasses on. That's why I can't see anything, right? Good morning, Mom. I'm going to see my mom later today. We'll see if I survive this afternoon. We are going horseback riding. My mom, Jocelyn, my daughter, and my sister, Jessica. And of the four of us, I am the one who is not a rider. And I've tried before. Years ago, I dated a guy who had like a farm of I don't know if you call them pedigrees, but very fine horses. And every single one I got up on, I felt was certainly trying to kill me actively. One of them just rode around the pen like a maniac. And I got about 200 splinters. So anyway, we'll see what happens. I'm going to maybe wear a hat and hope for the best. You know, people always say that animals like horses can sense when you're scared. It's not that I'm scared, Mom. I'm very excited to do something together. But I'm in such a bad mood. I'm also partly prepared to die. That's like how bad of a mood I'm in. So let's turn the frown upside down and have a great time together. Penny. Oh, you all are chatting, huh? Hey, Linda. Hey, Cece. Let me scroll down here. Careful. All right. Janice, good morning from Minnesota. Good morning. Penny finding out if cashmere sweaters felt. Yeah, cashmere sweaters will do great. You know, there's the thinner and the thicker. There's sweaters and there's sweaters, right? But the cashmere will be great for washing. It'll get nice and full. It'll get a little felted. But I mean, assuming it's regular cashmere, like you would wear like a cashmere sweater, like a lady sweater, it'll be perfect. And it'll be perfect for cutting. I just put a video out yesterday afternoon on cutting it up, hacking it up at the seams, doing horizontal versus vertical versus diagonal, and what works a little bit less well. But at the end of the day, square peg, circle hole, you can make anything work. It's just some things will be easier to hook with than others. But that's a pretty good video. It was like a half-hour video. That should work fine, though, Linda. That should work great. Oh, good morning, Naomi. Naomi's there at Ravensgate Primitives. I'm really hoping to go out to Naomi next Wednesday. If you're back on, she just did that great fair, and I visited her stall at the Woodstock Fair at Roseland Cottage. Beautiful stuff. But I'd love to record now that we're over 1,000 subscribers. I can record coffee time at other places. I can be mobile, which is nice because I could record there where there's people hooking and doing things like a little group. And we can look at some of Naomi's stuff that she sells because she sells beautiful kits and wool and supplies. So hopefully that'll happen. Good morning, Olivia. I'm getting your kit ready. Good morning, Michelle and Woolen Life. What a great video. What size cutter blade? Okay, so for the sweaters, I was using an 8. I had also used a 6 before. In that video, I was using an 8. I don't think I'd use anything smaller than a 6 because because each strip is going to be made up of like thousands of little loops, being the machine-made knit that you're cutting up. So when you cut it up too narrow, those little loops will want to start breaking. So a 6 is okay. A 6 and up is okay. I would go more for a 7, 8, but a 6 will work too. Anything under a 6, I think you're going to be getting a lot of breaks, a lot of grief and aggravation. Hello, Susan. Have you noticed that a bleach test some garments that have 100% wool label that they actually do contain synthetic fibers? Yeah, I have noticed that. And some of the synthetics, some of the blends that I've washed that are wool with a mix, some of them have been okay, and some of them have been more problematic. So with the kits that I put together, because there's money involved there, I made sure everything was all wool and there were no mixes. Except for the Angora. There's some Angora for the pumpkin ones, the thankful cornucopia ones. Sunny, thank you. But for myself, the blends that I've gotten that are wool mixes with synthetic, they've been okay enough that I scissor cut a lot of them and have been hooking with them anyway, and that has been working okay. But it is very tricky, and it will always be different from sweater to sweater. And buy them cheap if you can, and you will get used to seeing, when you're looking at them, you will get used to gauging how well they will perform in terms of cutting and hooking with them. It's just something that your eye gets used to seeing and going, this looks a little looser than the last one, and that one was right on the edge of being useful. So you get a feel for it. But buy them cheap and experiment. Good to see everybody here. Okay, so bunch of things today. Yesterday we were talking about the Tavern Signs, and I got so excited last night. Does anybody know My first strip jams up my Model A. So you're putting it in a sweater and it's jamming up the cutter. Doreen, is that what's happening? Loved your video yesterday. Thanks, Susan. See this, you have to be really careful with the synthetics because when you're putting it through the stripper, if you hear like a moderate grinding noise, you should just stop because that means there's a synthetic in there and it's going to be dulling your blades. You can't have them sharpened, but why do that? You can cut them with a scissors, not a sweater. Oh, just wool and it's jamming up your cutter. I don't have a bliss cutter. What about using a rotary cutter? Definitely using a rotary cutter or just using scissors. Scissors works, great. Cut as you go is my advice because the more you have piles and nests of strips sitting around, particularly sweaters, they get tangled up in themselves. It's like Medusa's hair. So I try to cut as I go and see how it goes. But yeah, your cutter shouldn't be jamming. It might be if it's like a bliss model, if you lift it up, you probably already know this, there's the knob underneath to adjust the tension. Sometimes it's a little too high, sometimes it's not high enough. Sometimes that can help. You probably know that already. It's probably something more technical, but that's just a dummy's answer to problems with cutters because they're such simple machines, but sometimes the blades need sharpening if you're cutting the wrong things with them. Let us know how it goes, Doreen, because you should be able to use your cutter. None of them are cheap, so you should definitely be able to use it. Bliss cutter issue. Try running a fabric sheet through the cutter. Oh, like a dryer sheet through the cutter. See if that helps. Like a dryer sheet, the nice smelly gossamer type ones. That would be a cool thing. Let's see what Susan says. I know there's a little delay. That would be really cool. But we were talking about Tavern Signs and about great, super. We were talking about Karl and Mary Jo Gimber's like epic work of a lifetime, recreating early American tavern signs as hook drugs. Now they've got over 100. And I'm going to show you the 2 articles from Rug Hooking Magazine from past years. This book is much newer than the 2 rug hooking articles. They've been at it for a long time. This is like a labor of love, hooking these tavern signs. This book is from 2016. Tavern Signs, in case you weren't on yesterday, Karl and Mary Jo Gimber, Gimber. Try rubbing dryer sheets all over the wool. That's a good tip too, Sheila. Thanks. I don't do that. I'll give that a shot. It's good to keep things nice and perfect working order and do preventative stuff rather than repair stuff, So we were talking about the ideas of making tavern signs, and I was getting super inspired with thoughts of doing some tavern designs and releasing them in November. I've done a few. I found one more that I did called the Broken Vase. So I linked that yesterday. I forgot that I'd done that one. And I have a few that are half sketched that I put down to fill orders. But I was getting really inspired reading this book because it really is honest to God, when people do this kind of work, they put this much time, energy, thought, talent into a project like this that, preserves history and is beautiful. It's rug hooking. It's a great crossover for us. But if that's your life's work, you've done it right? This is unbelievable, this body of work. And it says that they sometimes show their stuff, probably not at this moment, but hopefully in the future, they'll be showing stuff. They're in Pennsylvania, so it might be there. But we have a reason to go to Pennsylvania anyway, because of the Magdalena Ebby Briner Trail, right? So we're going to head out there regardless. We might as well tie in all these great tavern signs. So we left off talking about the crocodile tavern sign. And how different that was and how that was used as a secret symbol in early America for meeting. It was a traditional symbol for apothecaries and drinking establishments. And then she's talking about the unicorn as a symbol. Look at this beautiful rug. It's almost like Delft on the inside. See that body? Isn't that gorgeous? And this is Mary Jo because look at the little face right here. But she talks about this place called the Unicorn Tavern, and she talks about how unicorns, and I know a lot of people love unicorns, and Libby, I'm working on a unicorn design for you because I know you need one for your granddaughter, and I have not forgotten. But unicorns have always been popular images in England, right? Unicorn tapestry, but also in colonial America because it was always believed, this is something that came down through many hundreds of years, it was always believed that, number one, assuming a unicorn is real, that's a big assumption, right? That the horn was filled with the antidote to any poison. So it would be a big deal. You get the images like the unicorn in captivity. There would be a reason why if a unicorn existed, somebody would want to catch it, because that was really something that people believed. These kinds of superstitions that you see pop up in symbolism of art, old rugs, everything from early America, they are usually based in folklore, word of mouth, and superstition, because superstition at this time is a huge, big thing. You can imagine at the time of these old tavern signs, the designs that she's pulling from, life was not easy, right? In the US or anywhere, but life was particularly not easy in the US, setting up colonies. And you can imagine when you left your house that day, the number of things, like I think I'm having a bad day, the number of things that could happen to you that would be really bad. So people tended to, religion was obviously a thing that grounded most people, particularly in New England, but you tended to, if you left your house in the morning, for example, and you happened to touch your post or your gate post on the way out of your house, and then you had that day and good things happened, you didn't get attacked by anybody, you didn't lose your job, you didn't lose an arm, nothing bad happened, there wasn't a storm that destroyed your house or your crops, nothing bad happened, then probably the next day you would leave your house and tap the post again. And maybe then you would start tapping every fence post as you went. And you would probably every day add to your list of behaviors what you did the day before, because people became superstitious in this way. And you would repeat patterns of things, thinking that was the formula to protect yourself from all of the unknowns, weather, attack, war, disease, illness. It's really a thing. And of course, these people weren't stupid. It was just a lack of information, a lack of choices and opportunities. But for that reason, you get a lot of symbols that no longer exist today in early American art. So the unicorn has changed meaning over time, but the horn has always been important because of its magical powers. So you'll see that in a lot of these signs. Then we see things like this. I think I showed you this one, the peacock, the symbol of purity now, right? It's the symbol of purity, and sometimes it's a symbol of vanity. But really, in early America, it was a symbol of perfection. So whatever your trade was, if you worked in silver, textiles, food, whatever, and you used the peacock, it was like you saying you were the best. So that has shifted meaning a little bit too. Of course, everything shifts meaning over time between Europe and the US, and even region to region, everything will shift meaning. So when we're talking about symbolism, or if you begin to plan your own rug, whether it's a tavern sign or not, and you're thinking about symbols to use, you have to use symbols that mean something to your sort of micro family or your community, your family, a joke among friends, that kind of thing. For example, total side note, but for example, I don't think my sister's watching, but one day she came into our car and she was sitting in the back seat between the kids, and she doesn't have kids, so she's like, has a normal life. So she had beautiful clothing on. I think I picked her up from work at Yale. She works in art restoration. She's an incredible painter. And she got out of the car and she had these beautiful shoes on. They were like fabric, and they had the shape of like Cinderella's slipper, like a beautiful pointed toe, something I haven't worn for myself like 30 years. So she got out of the car and on her foot, right on the front of it, was an empty McDonald's fry packet. So we laughed so hard because it was just a symbol of what like my life is like right now with the kids. And now every time I'm bored and I feel like doing something with her, I send her a video of my foot with a McDonald's fry packet over the front of it walking down the sideways, just like a 2-second video, because no matter what day of the year it is, there is always a McDonald's fry packet in the back seat. Always. There is now, and I'm sure there will be tomorrow, even if I empty this one. So it's just, every person in every family has these funny symbols that you can think about incorporating into your patterns. Now, this is interesting. Something happened last night that was fun. So it is funny, Doreen. It's funny how crazy and off the rails everything is, especially now. But we looked at this one. This is the rebus one. And I related this to Longfellow because he did so much with rebuses. Crowfoot's in. And of course, Crowfoot's in. But what's interesting about this is I mentioned a book where many of these patterns came from. And then I went to clean up a little bit, which I hardly ever do. And I put some other books back on the shelf. And I had the book. right? This is the way it is when you buy too many books. This is the book I referenced yesterday where a lot of Mary Jo and Karl's designs came from. It's this book. So I happen to have it. It's called Lions and Eagles and Bulls, and it's put out by the Connecticut Historical Society, which is CHS. They're based in Hartford. Early American Tavern and Inn Signs. And you know what I found? Let me show you this again. And now look at this. So neat, right? I was super excited when I found that. So that's where, and it is obviously a rebus. So Mary Jo has popped it a lot. But this book is really neat. This is not a rug hooking book. It's all about early American taverns and signs, but owned by the Historical Society here in Connecticut. Now, your historical society probably has different things that are unique to your area. This one happens to have a lot of tavern signs. That's their special collection. Just like Mystic, Seaport, I've said this before, has the figureheads, the fronts of the boats. Everybody will have different things, and it's a great resource, especially as a folk artist, as you are, to go and look at this stuff and sketch it or get postcards. Most of this stuff will be copyright free because it's that old. So the only thing that is usually copyrighted will be the photograph of the thing. But always check with the Historical Society if you're making a sign that is like for commercial use and not just for fun in your living room, or make your own sign and fuse some of these elements that we're talking to together. But the funny thing was I looked at the resource manager's name for the Connecticut Historical Society because I shot her an email last night and said, do you have any hooked rugs that I could look at? And do you know what her last name is? Crowfoot. I mean, have you ever heard that last name before? Because I hadn't. And I thought, how weird is that? So when I sent the email, I had to say, first of all, I need to ask you whether you are related to the Crowfoots of the sign that, you know, your organization owns. Because I thought, what are the chances? It's a sign, like no pun intended. It's a sign. We're going down some crazy rabbit hole. That's a to be continued for sure. So then we're talking about the chapters of this book and the different themes that I'm not going to show you all the rugs because I want you to get the book if you're interested. These rugs are over the top. So we talk about the different themes. And of course, being an early American theme, the taverns, there's a lot of eagle themes and patriotic themes. Now, just this cover of the book has a lot going on in it in terms of symbolism. As a new country, our symbol was the eagle. And of course, when like Jefferson, Franklin, and John Adams sat down to write the Declaration and all of the early paperwork that made us a country with a small u, we were not really the United States. That kind of happened by accident. The first time it was written, it was just a lowercase u. It was just the states. So that changed over time too. But it was a super frustrating process for them putting that paperwork together and even choosing a symbol, an animal symbol that would be like the mascot for the new country was a problem. And you've probably heard the story that Ben Franklin really strongly wanted the turkey. And that didn't happen, of course. In the end, they went with the eagle for lots of reasons, I think, mostly integrity and looks. But in this rug, they've got the symbol of like a shield, which represents us winning and having become our own republic. So this is like a victory shield. This is the globe, obviously, which symbolizes the opportunity to now trade to all corners of the world. Because, of course, while we were fighting the British, there were all kinds of embargoes and limits on what we could do as far as trade went. So she's hooked in the globe to show after the war, after we were our own people and not relying on anybody at all, we were able to do trade again to all the corners of the world. And then the wheat sheaf, which was kind of like one of these things to say, to represent incredible abundance of agriculture, which this country represented. So all of this is very symbolic just in this one rug. W.W. Kent, the hooked rug just got delivered. Oh, great. You got the Kent book. So there's 3. You probably got the first one. You're going to love it. Those early Kent books documenting the very early pre-Pearl McGowan era of hooking. I think I put all mine back on the shelf. I think that's probably what I was doing when I found the Connecticut book. But you're going to enjoy that immensely. It's so much fun. So be looking out for all these great rugs in here. I'm not going to show you all of them. Eagles and things like that. Patriotic themes. Now, this is a great one. I'm going to show you this one because I can't not. This is another subtle rebus one. It's the Sons of Liberty. I know it's a tree, and it's not Sons of Liberty tree, but it's Sons of Liberty, who are the people who were the agitators who in Boston really got the revolution going. The pine tree is the symbol for the Liberty Tree. So when you hear talk of the Liberty Tree, we're talking about a pine tree. So the sons of the tree. If you saw this symbol on a tavern, you knew that you could go there and talk about rebellion and war and overturning everything, the structure as it was. You could safely do that there. The pine tree is going to be a really important symbol in early America because of the Sons of Liberty. But you also, if you visit antique stores and stuff, if you ever find coins, they were only minted in New England that had pine trees. These are from the colonial era, because that really was the symbol of liberty and what was about to happen. So that's another theme that you can look for. I showed you this one, I think, yesterday. The temperance one is really cute. And this one is in the book too. So let me grab this. I want to show you the comparison, because Mary Jo, I think, does most of the designing, but she did such a nice job popping pictures from the actual, here it is. It's very different, the original sign. Now you can see there's a globe in there, and you probably can't see because it's so dark, but there's a moon here, and she hooks that. It's hard to see on the original, but she hooks it. So the moon and the globe, and then there's a bit of floral here. But, you know, we're not talking about, obviously, the temperance movement of the early 20th century. We're talking about the temperance movement of the middle 18th century, because people became aware that with the rationing drinking as part of your pay, and the idea that drinking relaxed you wasn't universal. And of course, drinking makes some people tired, it makes some people angry, it has different effects. And there was a heavy temperance movement at that time. And it's weird to see tavern signs that say temperance, but there's a lot of them. So this book, I cannot say enough about. It is over the top. Got to show you one more. The Crossed Keys. Look at the beautiful background of antique black on this. The Crossed Keys Hotel. This is important in terms of a symbol. The origin of crossed keys can be found in the Bible, and it represents St. Peter, who's given the keys to heaven. So there's that reference there. During medieval times, innkeepers borrowed the image of the crossed keys for hotels to show that whether it was a hotel or just your house, that you could put people up and that it was like a safe environment to stay. So that's been a important symbol for a long, long time. And we know that there were at least 50 taverns in the colonies during early America that were called the Cross Keys and used that as a symbol. So it was really good that she included this rug. And this actual sign is in the Bucks County, Pennsylvania Historical Society. So you can check that out there. But I can't recommend this book enough. At the end, she talks about hooking with wool and recycled clothing. I think I mentioned that yesterday. She talks about what kinds of wool makes sense. She talks about being sure that and we've said this before, make sure that there's no moths, moth eggs, anything in it. Leave it outside in the cold, unless you're bringing it in and putting it directly in the wash. If it's old stuff that you don't know about, that you don't know where it came from, sweaters and stuff, just put it directly in the wash, because if you put it like in the closet and then moths, whatever, spawn, video games, you're going to have a real big problem. So that book by Mary Jo and Karl is over the top great. And this book, in terms of a historical reference and for inspiration, if you'd like to do your own tavern sign, is also over the top great. So let's look at some of the stuff that Rug Hooking Magazine has done to celebrate this collection of tavern rugs. This is the later one, but this article I just showed you quickly yesterday was from December 2016. And they were sort of touting, this is not done by the Gimbers. This was designed and hooked by Therese Schick, SHICK, in Annandale, New Jersey in 2014. But they reference the Gimbers' work too, of course. But so this is just another example of a beautiful tavern sign. See with the mugs here, public house with a K. And again, using house, getting away from inn or tavern, getting away from those British words, going more toward house and hotel. House is like more of a Dutch German word, right? So getting away from the English language as we feel less and less happy with the British, and to be fair, I hate anti-British sentiment, because at this time you have to remember that in the colonies, British people, we were British, number one, and a lot of other things. Melting pot immediately. But you have to remember that from the 1600s, there were British people who were stationed here as soldiers to protect the colonies, which many of which were British owned, as like business ventures. British people were stationed here for over 100 years, protecting settlers from the frontier, meaning the native people, because there was obviously a lot of trouble with that dynamic. So by the time of the Revolution, there were so many British people living here already who had been living here for generations, married British women. A lot of extra people shipped in right before the fighting, but you have to wonder how hard these people fought, being essentially from here, being married to people from here. And to be fair, we owed Britain something after having like permanent bouncers in place for 100 years, and a lot of other things, of course. There's many sides to every story, right? But I'm glad we're us. So this is Rug Hooking Magazine, June, July, August 2006. And this one got soaked, but luckily I could still read it. Karl Gimber, Jack of all trades, here. And then it's showing some of his rugs. This is not a tavern sign. This is like a store sign, boots and shoes. They like to do the things with the boots. And this one is in the book. That's in the tavern book. Goot in boats, the goat boots in. And she took this from, I think, a weather vane, I think it said in the book, and then put the boots on it. But it's a beautiful article about his rugs, his cooking, his hooking, and about him. And here's the crow's foot again. And they're showing this one, too, which is also in the book. I don't want to show you everything because it's all good to look and find. And, of course, those rug hooking magazines are available everywhere. Rug Hooking Buy and Sell on Facebook. We're almost out of time. So with the last few minutes, I'm going to save my other stuff. I had a bunch of mail to show you, but we can look tomorrow. I just want to look quickly at this book, because if you are doing your own designing, whether it's a tavern sign or something similar, symbolism matters in your rug. And maybe it doesn't just matter. Maybe it's your starting point for your design. So this book is called Sampler Motifs and Symbolism by Patricia Andrle and Lesley Rudnicki. So I'm going to show you that. You can always rewind and pause. That's a toughie. Fraser Rugs tonight. Okay. So Linda's saying she's been advised by Fraser Rugs not to use the dryer sheets. All right, let's keep an eye on that one. You love that book? I do too, Naomi, right? It's awesome. So let me just tell you some quick symbols from this book. I'm not highly recommending this book because it's unless you are very religious, most of these are religious references. So decide if that's your thing. And if it's not, maybe choose one that's more general. But they're giving you letter by letter. For example, this is W. The weathercock or weather vane is a symbol of mutability and fickleness. The weeping willow, you probably already know, is a symbol of mourning. The whale is a symbol of regeneration because of the Jonah and the whale story. Wisdom is symbolized by bees, the color white, the elephant, a fountain, an owl. A woodpecker is a symbol of protection. It goes letter by letter and does tell you some really interesting things. A thistle, like a Scottish thistle, is also a symbol of protection. A thunderbolt is a symbol of, you probably guessed it, justice. But it's a neat alphabet. A scallop, you know how you see scallops, or we usually say lamb's tongues, but scallops as borders, as motifs. A scallop is a symbol of hope or a pilgrim. So that's neat to know, because putting that in there, whether, the next person knows it or not, you know that. When you incorporate it into your design, your rug, you know that that's part of what you're thinking and what you intend. Scissors indicate mortality and the unpredictability of life. Isn't that interesting? It makes sense. A rainbow is a symbol of hope or promise of peace. A rabbit is gentleness and timidity. Prosperity is represented by an acorn, a basket of fruit, cherry tree, cornucopia, or a pomegranate. A primrose symbolizes first love or youth. In folklore, the primrose protected against witches and disease and allowed one to see fairies. So that's really neat. If you were doing like a bit of a fantasy rug, a primrose might be a nice border or a nice motif. You probably already know the pineapple is a symbol of hospitality. People in early America, right through the Gilded Age, knew that, because when people went out on trading voyages on ships to other lands, it was very typical for the captain of the ship to bring back a pineapple and stake it onto his post in front of his house. So in, for example, Newport, Rhode Island, if you were living on Bellevue Ave, where all those beautiful homes are, you would see pineapples on almost every post. Not for the barons of industry, for the earlier ones in the earlier 19th century. The parrot is a beautiful bird, but it's a symbol of gossip and mocking someone. oak tree, olive, owl. The ox is a symbol of patience and fortitude. It just goes on and on. The mermaid is a symbol of vanity. Also the mirror, of course, when she's holding it, that's a double. Milk is a symbol of rebirth, the elixir of life. A monkey is a symbol of folly and laziness. So it's so fun to find a book like this. Again, this isn't majorly comprehensive, but it's good. I don't think it's cheap either. I found it in a used bookstore. It relates to samplers. So if you also like needlework, you'll extra like this book because it has a lot of interesting information in it. And at the end, there's a lot of designs for samplers. So if you happen to double as a cross stitch or needlepoint artist, then you will really love that book. It was great seeing everybody. I do feel better. See what happens. And in the meantime, the sun came out. So I guess the frown got turned upside down in the end. It's all interesting. Going through this stuff is just so much fun. Do you know of any books on Canadian tavern signs? Anita, I don't, but let me research that a little bit. I don't have any. And the thing is, if I had seen one over the course of all the years that I've been interested in history, I definitely would have picked it up because we're French Canadian and I also love the idea of Canada and learning about Canada. So I haven't seen one in my travels, or I know I would have grabbed it. But I bet there is one. Amazon, Abe Books, ABE, they always have everything. I'm going to check too, though, because I would like something. We know this book, of course, mentions the maple leaf as being for Canada. That is like the designated, not just because of the flag, but even earlier stuff, you're seeing the maple leaf to represent Northern New England and Canada. But we could use a Canada book because I know there's a lot of Canada people on. Have a great day, everybody. We didn't get spammed today. Woohoo! I will see you tomorrow. What day is today? Is today Thursday? Is today Thursday? If this is Thursday, yes. Okay, then tomorrow we don't have coffee time. We have cocktail time at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll move on to a bunch of other fun stuff that I've just been putting off and some crazy mail that came. We're going to open some crazy books together that I ordered earlier this week based on our earlier talk. So we can open those tomorrow and look at those together. Have a great afternoon, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.